healthcare as an industry had more women publicly traded CEOs than most other industries, and now we've sort of gone right backwards in time. Why have we not made quicker progress with getting more women into the C-suite?
Pull up a chair when you have something to say, like speak up, know what you're talking about, and ask for what you want. I wouldn't shy away from those things. I think that's the way to navigate any sort of bias that exists and do it with grace, but be firm. And I think eventually we're going to see more and more balance.
This is Second Opinion. I'm Christina Farr.
I'm Ash the News. And I'm Luba Greenwood.
Welcome to the pod, where each week we navigate what's really going on in healthcare through strikingly candid conversations with the entrepreneurs and investors leading the charge. As your co-hosts, we promise to bring the perspective of a former journalist and investor, a doctor, a lawyer, immersed in the future of medicine with life sciences and digital health.
And we're here to sift the signal from the noise in all of these conversations.
Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome to this special edition of Second Opinion. Ash and I have just gotten back from health and we are exhausted, but we couldn't miss this opportunity to say hello to all of you. And we decided for this quick and dirty edition, we would be talking about the lack of female CEOs in the healthcare C-suite, especially given the news of Karen Lynch's departure from CVS Aetna, which was a huge bummer, I think, for a lot of us in the industry. And that follows departures from Roz Brewer and also Elizabeth Burr from Walgreens and Rite Aid, respectively. Okay, Ash, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we are just back from HLTH, or are we supposed to call it health? I never really know. And just, I think, getting back into the swing of life. So many people are sick from having been in Vegas for 48 hours. I somehow managed to come out unscathed this year. But Ash, tell me a little bit about just general vibes. I know you were only there for a short time. So what did you think this year? Like, how was it different from last year?
So I didn't really attend health. I flew in for a few meetings and flew out. I probably spent a total of less than an hour inside the booth. I didn't see as many folks walking around. I thought it was less busy, which I actually like. And I ran into folks that I wanted to chat with at Starbucks right outside of health, and that was really fun. So I felt like it was just a more approachable, quieter crew. I'm not sure what's going on in the market, but that's happening. But I thought that was good. You know, lots of booths, interesting stuff, but I didn't really see a whole lot of people standing around the booths either.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm reticent to almost say this out loud, but I think the move is to just hang out by the pool at the Palazzo, which is something I realized way too late this year. Finally got up to the pool at the very end of the conference, and I saw a lot of friends who I would say are doing health right, pina colada in hand, hanging out in the sun. And I'm, smelling of smoke, and I've been in the casino for 2 days straight. And I was just thinking, this is my plan for next year. So if you want to do a meeting with me, please expect to come join me at the Cabana.
Well, it's funny you say that because I actually went to the gym at the Venetian and I saw so many people I wanted to see bright and early, 6:30 in the morning, 7 a.m., getting their workouts in and getting their smoothies in. And I felt like I had more productive conversations up there than I did down on the casino floor. So yeah, you'll probably find me up there at the beginning of the day.
That's the move. Okay, so you heard it here.
Yes.
Get to the gym at 6:30 in the morning and then head to the pool and just skip the whole madness of the expo hall and all the content, I'm sorry to say. So that's how to do health. Moving on, Ash, one of the big topics I did want to talk to you about is there was this moment in 2023, and I know you remember this because we were both tweeting about it. And it was really this moment when there were a lot of women in the C-suite in healthcare running companies. We had Rite Aid had a female CEO. It was Elizabeth Burr. She was there for a little bit of 2023. We had Karen Lynch from CVS and Aetna. We had Roz Brewer at Walgreens. We had Gail, obviously, at Elevance. So, there were a lot of women. And move forward a year, and most of them have gone. So I wanted to ask you why you thought that is. Is it back to the same problem that we've just been seeing for years, where women are just brought in to be the turnaround CEO? Like, what do you make of this?
It's really interesting. Look, I don't know if I have an answer to your question other than to say I think the economy has changed from 23 to 24, and it might be that the market and the investors might just feel more comfortable with the people they know. They've had these folks in seat, and bringing them back will mean it's the same level of growth. So I'm hoping that's the answer. Of course, you could come up with a lot of other reasons why, women aren't sitting in those seats, and we could talk about that from a broader perspective. But I'm hoping it's because the economy has changed and they're looking for some level of stability. It's what they know.
Yeah, and you could argue, I mean, I guess I think that feels right to me. I also think it's probably a case by case thing. I think for Walgreens, maybe Roz had a great consumer background, but wasn't the right leader for essentially a pharmacy business, right at the moment when Walgreens was.
What does Walgreens want to be?
That's a good question.
Is it a healthcare company? Is it a consumer company? Do they want to be the next Starbucks? I mean, if that's the case, I thought Roz was the right person. It's like you have to put the right people in seat, and that means that you have to know what you want to be. And I'm not sure I know what Walgreens wants to be, to be honest.
I almost wish we could have switched them because I feel like Karen is such a good health plan CEO. And if she had been at Walgreens, she might have helped them figure out like why they're the only ones right now left out in the cold without being part of a payer PBM. And then on the other side, I think Roz could have been great for CVS because, interestingly enough, when I was at Health, one of the people that I spoke to and then also interviewed on stage was Mark Bartolini, who was the former CEO of Aetna. And I asked him, what would you have done if you were Karen? Did you give any advice to Karen before she took over the role? And he said, I wish she had focused on the retail experience because the pharmacy, should be disrupted. It hasn't been disrupted in a long time. Think about it. I mean, you walk into a pharmacy and it's just empty shelves wherever you look. It's not relevant to the time that we live in. And imagine if the pharmacy were actually a true healthcare experience, if it felt more like a clinic, if it had, a place where you could go get physical therapy. I mean, the sky's the limit for someone who could think about it in a new way. And he told me, we brought in at one point one of the people who designed the Apple Genius Bar stores because for them that's what good looks like. And just imagine if Karen Lynch had decided to do that instead of making a series of acquisitions like Signify that really I think didn't pan out as expected.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I kind of felt like every one of those retail health systems went on a M&A tear without really thinking about where they wanted to invest their dollars. And maybe they did internally, we just don't know it. But out there, it just felt like growing into primary care is a thing to do. We're going to go buy a bunch of those companies and anything adjacent to it. Well, you know what? Primary care is probably the toughest thing out there. And if you're going to bring that experience into a retail pharmacy, you better really think about the economics. I'm just not sure if those tolerance for those things in the 2024 market, the way the economy is running. And maybe we just happen to have two women CEOs sitting in those seats that were at the head of those acquisitions. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really three, leaving us with very few remaining. At one point, we really were at the forefront. Like healthcare as an industry had more women publicly traded CEOs than most other industries, and now we've sort of gone right backwards in time. I mean, I guess bigger picture question for you, Ash, like it doesn't seem to improve. It seems to be constantly feeling to me as if it's like one step forward, two step backwards. Like why have we not made quicker progress with getting more women into the C-suite, especially when you look at the Fortune 500 or even Fortune 100, Fortune 50, where you see even fewer women.
I think maybe I'm seeing something differently than you are, but I would say in the broader context of like the Fortune 500 companies, I see a broader systemic issue across all the sectors, not just healthcare. I just think there are fewer CEOs in those seats. But I would say in healthcare, it's probably because you've got to focus on STEM, and we just don't have as many women in STEM yet to kind of go up the healthcare and life sciences ladder to be CEOs. So I think that's one issue. Whereas in non-healthcare industries, you have a lot more women that are entering the workforce. So you generally have a broader pipeline to get up to the CEO, the C-suite. I also think we don't have enough women broadly, particularly in healthcare and life sciences, that are taking on P&L responsibilities. And in order for you to get into the CEO seat, you really have to have that experience. That's what they look for. You tend to see a lot of women in roles that are really important, like human resources or, other types of administrative roles, or maybe even marketing, where there's no direct P&L responsibilities. It's sort of support P&L. And if you want to jump up into that CEO seat, I would say you really need that P&L behind you.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and I agree with you on P&L. And sometimes from the outside it looks like women have these big jobs like you said, but then when you kind of drill down, they are not actually managing a big budget, a big pool of money, which is what you need to be doing, like you said, to be CEO. Interestingly, just wrote a book. I think you know this, Ash, and publishing it next year, but I read this really fascinating study that I thought would be kind of relevant in this discussion, which was about how oftentimes when women are named CEOs, the company's stock will dip a little bit. And so a research team went in and they studied that phenomenon. They said, that's so interesting. Is it because of bias against women? And they found this really fascinating insight, which is that in cases where the female that was selected for the job was a very public figure, it tended to happen a lot. And in cases where it was somebody very private, it didn't happen at all. And so they asked the question, why is that? And the answer, which I think you'll find fascinating, is that the individual traders on Wall Street were not themselves biased, but they had a perception that everyone else was. So they thought that if it was a very public female, that everybody else would have that reaction. And therefore, stock takes a dip. When in reality, we know that when women do take these jobs, the companies tended to actually do better in the long run, because women who've made it all the way to that level have just had to work harder. They've had to prove their detractors wrong so many more times. They've faced adversity and gotten through that. So they tend to be the very, very best. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if you have a reaction to it.
I mean, if somebody had asked me what's the right path to get to the CEO seat, I would say make sure you assert your presence and have visibility. So maybe I'm doling out the wrong advice here for people that want to be in the seat. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I would still be visible. I mean, I think the bigger point is really about the sort of bias that people feel that others have, which is so interesting. But I would still be visible, because I think in this day and age, like you just have to be. It's like no longer really an option. And again, regarding the book I just wrote, there was an interesting study that HBR did where they looked at all the job listings for CEO roles. And in the old days, it used to just be terms like operational expertise and financial acumen that would come up in every single one of these job listings. And these days, communications is coming up more and more and more. So it's now incumbent on these CEOs not only to be able to run the business, run the P&L, but also be communicating and storytelling to, people that may be in 50 different states or even global, some of whom are working from home and some of whom are at the office and across multiple generations. And it's nowadays you have to have like you and I have talked about, you've got to be mission driven too. Like your business has to stand for something. You can't just be, making money. So in a way, I think women could be better at that, because we do tend to be the natural communicators and storytellers.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's one of the most important things you need to do when you're a leader, particularly in the C-suite. I mean, think about the pandemic. The companies that did well were companies where you had somebody at the top that was clearly communicating what they were doing, what they wanted to do, their mission, how they wanted to go about it. I just think that's really important to hold the company together when you have chaos happening all around you. So I would say, along with all of the other things that you mentioned, communications is definitely important. I mean, I was just joking earlier. I would just say definitely, like, make sure you're known. Pull up a chair when you have something to say, like, speak up. know what you're talking about and ask for what you want. I wouldn't shy away from those things. I think that's the way to navigate any sort of bias that exists, and do it with grace, but be firm. And I think eventually we're going to see more and more balance. And it wasn't that long ago that women got into the workforce full time, where they were taking executive roles. And so,
or even got the vote.
oh, got to vote.
Like that was like not that long ago.
So it's a matter of time. We're going to see more and more women. I actually think if you look at the Fortune 500 companies, we're doing better than expected. I think we're seeing more and more women come into the C-suite. The numbers are around 15% of Fortune 500 are CEOs. It doesn't seem like a lot, 13%, something like that. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it's better than it was 50 years ago. So I'll take it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Ash, this has been a great discussion. I love that we're talking about this, and you're the right person to be discussing it, because you have been a CEO and you've been involved with, running P&Ls. So love to hear it. Thanks so much for joining me. And by the way, folks, we're going to be doing more of these, just quick, short, one-on-one discussions, and I think you'll get to see a little bit more of how we became such close friends in the first place, and a lot of the banter. So thanks, Ash.
Of course, always nice chatting with you, Chrissy. And I would say if you need somebody to help you think through how to get your thoughts out there, there's nobody better on this planet than you.
Yes, and my advice is just do it. It's very quick.
And you said do it simply and do it.
Stop thinking about it. Just do it.
I love it. Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to Second Opinion. Share it with colleagues and friends, and message us to let us know what topics you want to discuss on the podcast. If you want to support the show, the best ways are to leave a review wherever you're listening, and make sure you are subscribed. And check out Christina's Second Opinion newsletter on Beehive. A link to subscribe is in the episode description. Second Opinion is part of Turpentine, the podcast network behind Turpentine DC, Age of Miracles, and more shows for experts by experts in tech.